This is Dengebe community in Zurmi local government area of Zamfara, where last Saturday's airstrike tragedy led to the death of 16 persons. The Nigerian Air Force fact-finding team is in the community to investigate the incident. The team, led by Air Vice Marshal Edward, inspects the sites of the airstrike and interacted with locals to gather first-hand information. He also met with the community leader, who guided them around the area, including the scene of the airstrike.
Our youths are always proactive. Once they hear of bandits attacking our community, they come out to defend us and chase the bandits away, even at great risk to their lives. On that fateful day, the youth and vigilantes confronted bandits and drove them into the bush. They returned home afterward, and as I instructed them to park their motorcycles, we suddenly saw an aircraft overhead. It dropped bullets that unfortunately hit some of them. Well, what happened was an act of God. Furthermore, what we need is protection from the bandits who constantly attack us.
The Director of Coordination and Cooperation in the Civil Military Relations Branch of NAF Headquarters, Air Vice Marshal Edward, explained that the team is tasked with the responsibility of uncovering the facts surrounding the incident.
There were points of impact where obviously whatever type of ammunition that was used impacted the ground based on the size of the crater we saw on the ground, and so the sharpness we've also be able to recover showed that indeed the impacts on some of the destroyed buildings we saw, some of the branches of trees that were also shown to us. We intend to go back with some of those evidences. Definitely they will undergo forensic examination, and it will help us to come up with a very, very something much more useful that the Chief of Air Staff will use to make his own informed decision.
The NAF team reassured the community of their commitments to conducting a thorough investigation into the airstrike and implementing measures to avoid future tragedies.
Oh yes, indeed. Yesterday was the Nigerian Armed Forces Remembrance Day, but while the entire country was marking that particular incident, very solemn and very reflective on the lives of members of the Nigerian Army lost in the line of, not just the Army now, the Nigerian Armed Forces lost in the line of duty. This was also happening in a community in Zamfara State, where it would seem that there was an accident, so to speak, where lives of civilians were lost as a result of perhaps misinformation, perhaps it's unclear really what it is, and that's what the Nigerian Air Force is investigating, led by Air Vice Marshal Edward Gapquet, who met with the community leader there, Alhaji Audu Sarkin Yaki. We understand that 16 Zamfara youths lost their lives in that airstrike performed by the Nigerian Air Force, and that they were not bandits. You heard the leader of that community there, speaking and saying a thing or two. These are the kinds of things oftentimes that people say can affect the level of patriotism people feel towards the Nigerian Armed Forces, and has the capacity to diminish it. But should it, and what can we all do to make sure that this doesn't happen, particularly those in government and those members of the Nigerian Armed Forces who experience incidences like this? Joining us this morning is none other than Mr. Laudu Akonde, who is a former presidential spokesperson, and last time I checked, very much a journalist. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah, that's true. It's 16th of January. It's still the New Year, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this is what we are, looking at now in the new year. The Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Air Force and Navy, still fighting this ongoing war across different parts of the country. And as a result, we're recording collateral damage from friendly fire, it will be called, but friendly fire still kills, unfortunately. Do you think that we've handled incidences like this, where our citizens have been involved and caught in the line of fire, perhaps erroneously? Have we handled it well over the years?
Well, I will say that this is a very serious challenge that the Nigerian Armed Forces have been dealing with over a fairly sustained period of time. So to the extent that we still have it over and again, it will seem, so that is problematic, and I am also troubled by the losses of life. It's quite, it's something that you cannot take back. Those guys are dead, and it's very sad. It's very troubling. So when we urge the armed forces to try to be more painstaking in trying to deal with the situation, we must commend them for I think they've increased the tempo generally. I think they are giving the bandits and the terrorists some very hard and very difficult time. We should acknowledge that and comment, their actions. But we need to also urge them that it's important to be much more painstaking to avoid these friendly fires, to avoid these collateral damages. We must commend the leader of the community. How he was able to balance the loss of his people with the understanding of the work that Nigerian military is doing. It's a very, the man did a human's job putting it all together, which is the reason why we also must say that, look, the investigation that the armed forces have commenced, should be thoroughly done, and it should be shared with the public. The outcomes of it should be shared with the public. You see, one of the things that some of our leaders miss about making certain things public is that So when they think that if you make it public, it's going to expose, some of the inefficiencies of the institution. But look, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. It will raise the awareness. It will raise the standard, the bar for everybody involved. To be much more careful, to be much more diligent. I will not say that they're not careful or they're not diligent, but look, when you put these things out in the open, everybody is on their guards. So it's important to let us know that this is what happened, this is what we found out. Don't let it be something that is going to be concealed, or you're trying to, manage put out the information of what happened honestly. First of all, like I said, sunlight is the best disinfectant. It also builds trust. There must be trust, and that's why you have to commend that community leader. There must be mutual trust between the people and the military, the armed forces, to be able to do this work continuously. Don't forget that we have also had situations in the past where there are contradictions within the community. Some of them did not feel any government impact, and they become very friendly, wittingly or unwittingly, with some of these bandits and some of these terrorists. And we have had situations where, the activities of the military were compromised, with information from the community. So it's a very intricate weave. So it's important in trying to unravel these things for the benefit of the common good, that the Nigerian military does its job painstakingly, diligently, and then when they investigate these things, they should tell us about it. Well,
coming from the history, I think the very first one I remember was the incident that happened in Ran, in Borno State, where the Nigerian armed forces, armed forces now, because the Army and the Air Force were involved in that particular one, but we saw the commander then who later on became Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff. Can't remember his name now. General Irabo, who was then leading Operation Lafia Adole, coming out to, take responsibility and, say indeed they were responsible for this, turn out their regrets. And we also saw later on, much later, in Tundumbiri, I think it was in Kaduna State, where the Nigerian army, again the army, this time around I think it was through drones, attacking the community, attacking that community. I think 85 people losing their lives, acknowledging that this is the situation. We've also seen attempts to try and do some reparation, because the loss of lives then was extensive. And people are wondering, how could this level of misinformation, because they said it was some misinformation, have happened so much so that you couldn't see that there were civilians, ordinary civilians involved in this. So there are big questions as to, whether what the processes are like within the Nigerian military. Whenever it is that it gets information, how is it able to verify? Because we've been told several times that these bandits are not in uniform, so they can't identify them oftentimes. They can only say if they're carrying guns or motorcycles. In this instance, we heard there were pictures of motorcycles. But, I mean, even ordinary people, too, use motorcycles. So would you say that they have been able to sanitize their own internal processes so well that this sort of incidences, are being reduced? Or I don't know. I'm looking for the right words to use now. But would you say that they have been able to verify their own internal processes so that this sort of casualties are not recorded?
Well, it's an ongoing. It's an ongoing work, I imagine, and to your point that we've had instances in the past where they have owned up, and what you expect that over time, consistently done, it will also improve the relationship with the people. It will also improve the need for diligence on the part of their own officers, even though that this is going to get out in the public. And I think that we should give them the credit in quickly responding to the situation, meeting with the community and promising to do an investigation. You never know how these things will end up. The community says that, look, those guys were actually vigilante people. We are also trying to go and rescue the situation. The military, the Air Force arrived, according to them, late actually, and by the time they got there,
they have chased out the bandits.
And now these people who chased out the bandits that were
came under fire.
So if that is the situation indeed, it just shows that there is still a little bit of lag in terms of the communication between our armed forces and people on the ground. You can't ever rule out ground intelligence. Especially for some of these air power manifestation, very critical, so that you don't hold, because information can change in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes, the whole situation can change. This may be what happened, we don't know, but what it tells us is that there has to be a little bit more, a stronger intelligence on the ground, so that kind of thing, you will imagine, the community that was saying that, they actually sent them there, and when, they were there when the thing was landed, was being dropped, it tells you that, if there were ground intelligence, maybe this would have been avoided, based on what we know. So we just have to encourage the Nigerian military to be more diligent, to see how it can do its job better. And we trust that they will.
What do you think should be done now?
Well, I think, like I said, this investigation should be thoroughly done. Let's know exactly what happened. Let's know what happened, and that way we can fix the situation. I think the Nigerian military, just like the entire Nigerian security architecture, they need to strengthen their intelligence. They need to strengthen their intelligence.
Yeah, but when I asked that question was more in terms of compensation, because
So once the military has satisfied themselves, the government satisfied themselves about what did happen, there has to be compensation. I think the National Human Rights Commission has done a very good job in documenting these things factually, and that also helps the government to pay compensation.
Well, I know Ayo is waiting to switch to politics. Ayo.
Well, the only political angle I'm looking at, Marwe, is, well, should I call it the big bat between the federal government through the Minister of Information and the Emir of Kano, Emir Sanusi Kaduna, Kano, who was speaking on whether or not he was going to make comments on the reforms being that the president, the federal government, has initiated and is going through. And of course, we have heard the response of the federal government saying, we don't need anyone's confidence or feedback or help or whatever. You know, the title of that statement that the federal government put out is actually, we don't need Sanusi's stamp of approval for FG's laudable policies. Well, you're a presidential spokesman, at least you've been one before, so you know how these things go. What's your take, Mr. Akonde?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Ayo. So, quite a few things. But the first thing is to say to the Emir, you know, His Royal Highness, that there are many of us who admire his sense of patriotism and who also, you know, value the substance of his contributions. So we won't want him to keep silent. You know, I think it was Edmund Burke that said that the only thing that has to happen for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. So, Emir, Your Royal Highness, no, we don't want you to keep silent. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, of course, you know, like the Emir himself said, you know, he's friendly with the people in government, starting from the president all the way. You know, I mean, the Emir of Sanusi is a Lagos man in that sense. So I'm sure that this is a personal fallout, you know, and I think the Minister for Information actually called it, you know, I think shift in loyalty. So, you know, we hope that they can sort themselves out in terms of the personal differences. But the duty and the task that is at hand for both government and all of us who have a voice in this country is to fix the country. And we have to rise above. We have to rise above our personal differences. We have to. We owe it, you know, as especially as members of the elite, we owe it to the people of this country, the majority of the people of this country, to serve them, you know, whether we are in government or whether we are outside government. So I will hope that Emir can sort his differences out with his friends. The third point, you know, that I'd like to make, and the final one, is that the Emir said that they couldn't find people of pedigree to explain what is being done. Now, I want to take it off from there. I don't think the problem is that this government doesn't have people of pedigree. I think the problem is that there has been a failure, a massive failure of coordination. There has been a massive failure of coordination. I don't think the pedigree gets better than the Wale Edun managing finance, you know, Dr. Cardoso in CBN, Bayo Onuga, you know, Sunday Dare doing communication. You know, now there are other people, you know, you have Dr. Patel, other people doing, you know, you have the Attorney General, you have excellent people in place. I hope that we can have more of such people, but the greater problem is the lack of coordination in the Tinubu administration. And I'll give you two examples. 5 months ago, the president approved that there should be an import waiver so that food products can come in and deal with the question of inflation. You know, whether that is a good thing or not, the president did approve. 5 months, and it was supposed to be for about 5 months. It didn't take off. It didn't happen. The president directed. That's one example. The second example was the IPs and university lecturers. The president directed, approved that university lecturers should be removed from IPs. It took 10 months for it to happen. What is going on?
I think you might be in a better position, Mr. Akande, pardon me for buttoning, to explain or help us understand what goes on in such situations. Because I'm sure that even the former President Buhari had from time to time also said, come on, wait a minute, I thought I already approved this. I already gave my word. I already gave a directive. A good number of times. I think I remember 2 clear times. The former President Buhari came, organized a meeting with security heads of law enforcement and security agencies that you guys collaborate. Isn't that they didn't hear him the first time? Second time he called this meeting, and until that administration ended, it seemed like nothing happened. And there have been a good number of times, again, you might be able to help us understand here, that the president would approve something, but the people to execute will probably keep it on the table for a while until, for one reason or the other, maybe Laulu goes back to the president and says, President, this thing is still on ground. And the president, hey, wait a minute, what are you talking about, Laulu? I approved this thing 4 months ago. What happens in that kind of situation?
Yeah, so thank you, Ayo. So that is why I described the problem as the problem of lousy coordination. There's no coordination taking place. You know, the president needs to sit down, the secretary to the government of the federation and his chief of staff. He needs to sit them down and say, look, guys, what's going on? Those are the 2 people that are mostly responsible for coordination of government business. In the case of IPs, do you know that the excuse was that the head of service, the office of the head of service said they did not get the memo from FEC on IPs. Okay. That's what they said.
That's a critical one, Mr. Akande. You know, if I listen well to the statement you quoted of Emir Sunusi, he was speaking to people of pedigree, telling people what is going on, not people of pedigree getting the job done. Raising another angle to the question you raised, your observation of collaboration, the challenge of communication, because it would seem like all we hear is government always responding or reacting to the issues and not communicating, taking the ownership of the story before people begin to get exactly what the issues are. So how significant is the problem of coordination? The problem of communication. You've spoken to coordination or collaboration. How significant is the problem of communication, communicating the economic reforms, the difficulties that people are going to get, and the fact that it's going to take X number of days, weeks, months, or years before people begin to feel the impact, the good side of what government is doing?
Right. So you see, the people that are managing communication cannot also be the people that are managing coordination. And if coordination is poor, the spokespeople are going to be struggling forever, to the extent that spokespeople cannot be the one running around to ensure that there is enforcement of presidential directives. So the problem will come face to face with the communication people, and at best they will struggle to try to explain it. Coordination is the very essence that produces effective communication. And some people have said that, look at the economic team. We don't even know, which goes to what Emir is saying in an aspect. We don't even know when do they meet, the economic management team. When do they meet? What do they do? Who is explaining what they are doing? The question of 5 months, the food import waiver that didn't happen, you know, if you had somebody explaining to us, you know, maybe that would have compelled even the internal workings of government, which goes to the first point that I made, you know, in my earlier conversation with Marco this morning. That look, if you don't put certain information out there, people just go down and everybody is just chilling. But when this information is out there and everybody knows that, okay, this is what government wants to do, within 3 months, we want to find out what is happening. Hey, I remember a third example, Ayo. The Oronsoye report last year, early part of last year, FEC and the president said there was an announcement that we will be implementing aspects of the Oronsoye report What has happened? The last time they had the chief of staff, he couldn't even give a timeline. The SGF, what is going on? A committee was set up. So clearly, the greater problem for me, the way I see it, based on my experience, both inside and outside, is coordination. And you're just going to make the life of the people doing this, the speaking, you're going to make their life a misery if government is not coordinated. Because how do you explain that? It's a struggle. The president needs to sit down, his henchmen, the chief of staff, the secretary general of federation, they must sit down and understand what their jobs are. They are failing so far.
Well, one of the things that really stand out for me is what he said about, what the emir said about friendship. He says, they're my friends, but if they don't behave like friends, I don't behave like a friend.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying to the emir, that look, I mean, you guys take your friendship brouhaha, go and sort it out, please, we need everybody, we need all hands on deck. I'm urging the emir, and look, emir, we take you very seriously. This is a very serious time in our country.
This is not just an ordinary friend, this is the emir, and his seat has been threatened, so to speak, by people whom he believes are working for the president.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, that we don't want our disputations, our elite disputations, at a time when there is serious hardship in this country, at a time when Nigeria has a high population of multi-dimensional poor people. This is not a time for us to be exhibiting our whims and caprices.
Clearly, the last word,
and I'm talking to both sides here.
Yeah, clearly the last word has not been heard. Or do you think that the statement of the Minister of Information puts paid to this?
I don't think so. I mean, if we know the emir very well.
One issue I really wanted to take up with you was the issue of Lagos State, but we're out of time. We're totally out of time. And, let me quickly sign him off. Mr. Laolu Akonde, former spokesperson, thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you so much.
Well, let's take a look at some of the feedback that you have sent to us now. I see this one from Tom Egbele, who says on our first conversation, human rights violation is the most brutal and savage approach used by various law enforcement agents to rein in dissenting voices in Nigeria. It must be made clear to all that wearing of uniforms does not confer an absolutist power on anyone. Enough. That's the view of Tom Egbele.
I'll take this one from Festus Akimboyewa, who says, while police in Nigeria have the reputation for ruthlessly responding to civil protests, Amnesty International's reports are always exaggerated. While the police must be investigated and officers found guilty of torturing and murdering innocent protesters must be prosecuted and punished, Amnesty International must be measured and objective in its reporting if it must be taken seriously.
Well, that's where we leave the program today. Thank you so much for your feedback. I'm Mal Yusuf.
Ayo Makine, have a productive day.